So we've got your activity book. We've got 2 of those, and your assignment book as well. Alright. So we are going to be using all 3 of these books today. Let me just get set up here. So, I think you did a little bit of measuring as well. Alright, so I'm going to be helping you today with your math assignments, alright? Alright, and now you are working on Unit 2. Right, okay. And your assignment that you recently had was in the workbook. Okay. Alright, so the way that I would like to work with you today is, first of all, now I've already reviewed your recent math assignment, and I took note of some of the concepts that you seemed to struggle with just a little. So we're going to look at those today, of course. I'd like to also work on just some basic math, arithmetic concepts. I always like to start with that. So I have marked off a few problems in some of these books that I'd like to just do along with you, and I'd like to try and recognize what areas you're having trouble with when performing these operations, okay? Some I noticed have to do with multiplication and division. Okay, so we're just going to practice. Doesn't hurt to go backwards just a bit, just to remember some things maybe you haven't worked on in a long time, okay? Sometimes we just kind of forget how it works. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to go over some of the problems from your assignment that you had a little trouble with. I'm also going to point out the areas where you were strong. It seems like you have a good knowledge of how to perform those operations, so that's really good. And then I'd like to move on and do a little bit of practice with what you will be working on next in your class. Okay? Alright, do you have any questions for me? Alright, so we are working on Unit 2. We're going to do a few problems from the book first, alright? And then we'll move on to your assignments, alright? Okay. Alright, so here we are. Let's see, this one. This one I believe has, yes, this one are the problems that we'll be working on toward the end of our time today. These are your upcoming topics that we can get a head start on, so I can help you with that. Okay. I think it was from this book that I would like to begin. Okay. Alright, so we are going to I'll start with some of these basic arithmetic problems. Okay, so we're going to start here. Now on this page you see we have 3-digit numbers. We have 2 of them. These are all addition problems. Okay, so yes, we know how to add and subtract. On this page, they want you to estimate to the nearest 100. And sometimes I think that can be a little bit tricky when we aren't sure which number we need to look at in order to do our estimations. Okay, so I am going to be doing some of these in the book with you, but we're going to put some of these up on the chalkboard and do them together that way, okay? So we'll do just a few from here. Okay, next, back here, you already have some practice done here, but we're going to do some standard subtraction problems right here. So you see it is a combination of different digits with different number of integers. So each problem has the same. As you can see, there's 2-digit numbers. We have some 3-digit numbers, but that can be a little tricky, especially when we're working with numbers with larger numbers at the bottom. Alright, so I think these ones are all pretty straightforward. We don't need to do any borrowing or anything like that. Alright, so we'll start with a few of these problems. Let's see, nothing here. Now here is where we will be doing some addition with different numbers that have either 3 digits or 2-digit numbers. Alright, so we'll have to carry over in some of the problems. We'll do a few of these. And let's see, on the other side we have some subtraction. Alright, we're going to do a few subtraction problems here. Now these problems on this page, we will see that we're going to have to do some regrouping. Okay, so for instance in this one right here, we can't subtract 5 from 4, so we're going to have to jog our memories and figure out how to borrow from the tens column. Alright, so I know you already know how to do all of these things, but it's good to practice them every day because it's easy to forget. Alright, we're also going to work on regrouping in some subtraction problems where we have double zeros. You can see on this one we have 900 minus 87. Now I know you can probably figure that out in your head, but we need to remember how to do it on paper when it's not so straightforward, okay? So we'll go over that. That can be one that people kind of forget how to do. Over here on this page is more estimating. I don't know if we need to do that again. Let's see. Okay, basic multiplication. Now I think that you actually were fine with the multiplication. These are smaller numbers, 2 digit times 1 digit. So we'll just do maybe 2 or 3 from here just to make sure we remember what we're doing. It also helps us to remember our multiplication facts. Sometimes we can forget those easily. And fractions. We can do maybe 1 or 2 because I believe you've already gone through the section with fractions, so we don't need to do too much with this. We'll come back to this another time when it's a little more relevant to what you're working on in class. But we'll just do maybe 1 or 2 of those. Alright, and lastly, we're going to work on subtraction that involves numbers with decimals. Okay, I think you're fine with that as well, but we're just going to make sure, okay? Alright, so that's it from this book that we're going to do. I'm going to do that, I think, up on the board. Let's see, this one here, like I said, this is what we're going to do. This is what you have coming up. This is more algebra. And from this one, I don't see that I've got anything marked off here. Okay, this is where I reviewed your assignments. So we can just have a look at the areas that you were having trouble. Okay. Alright, so let's get started. Alright. So let's start right here. So we're going to start with the problems that are adding by rounding each number to the nearest 100. So we remember that when we're rounding, we have to pay attention to which place value they want for us to estimate. Okay, so let's get this first. Alright, so our first problem is this. $876 plus. Okay, now we're not going to go through the detailed operation of adding. We're going to estimate our answer. So since we are estimating to the nearest 100, okay, what we need to do is look at the 8. And we're going to try to decide if this number should stay an 8 or if we should round it up to a 9. Okay, and the way that we figure that out is, can you tell me? Alright, so we look at the number in the tens position. That's right, and what do we look for? Alright, so it's a 7, and we know that if the number is equal to or above a 5, that means we round this number up. So this becomes 9, and what about the other two numbers? They become zeros because we're rounding to the nearest 100, so it becomes 900. Okay. So 876 rounds up to 900. And now let's estimate the 211. So which number are we changing or keeping the same? That's the 2. So we're trying to decide if the 2 should stay a 2 or if we should round it up to 3. Okay, so we look at the 1. and it is less than 5. So what do we do with the 2? We keep it as a 2. Alright. And 211 rounded to the nearest hundred would be... Okay, good. Now we can just simply add these numbers. That's easy to do when we estimate. And tell me the answer. That would be 0 and 9 and 2 is 11. So our estimated answer is 1,100 or 1,100. Okay. So do you feel comfortable with this? Would you like to try one more? Okay. Let's clear the board. Not sure how well. This eraser. That doesn't work too well. Okay. So I think that one you are pretty comfortable with. Alright, we're going to move on to some subtraction. Okay. So this one you did have a bit of trouble with. Okay. And this one, let's do right here. We will do $994 minus $542. Alright, so why don't you tell me where to start? Alright, so we start in the ones column, and we do 4 minus 2, and that is, okay, very good, 2, and then we move over to the tens column, and we have 9 minus 4, and that is, good, and lastly we have 9 minus 5 is, okay, great. So that one was pretty straightforward. Our answer is 452. Okay, would you like to try another of those? Okay, let's just do that right over here. Let's try 775 minus 304. Okay, so 5 minus 4 is 1. 7 minus 0, 7. Good. And lastly, that's 3, that's 4. Alright, very good. So I think you're pretty good with these as well. Again, always good to practice. Always good to practice the basics. Okay. Alright, now we're going to have to work on some addition with regrouping. So that's going to mean that gets a little bit more complicated, but I think you're alright. So our first problem is we have 698 plus 228. Alright, so can you tell me where to start? Okay, we have 8 plus 8, and what is the answer to that? So it's a 16, and what do we write right here? We write the 6, and what do we do? Carry the 1, so we have a 16, but we're just placing the 1 in the tens column. Alright, now we're going to add, we have 9, 10, 11, and 12. So what do we write down here? We write the 2 and carry the 1. Very good. Now let's add up our hundreds column. We have 6, 7, 8, and 9. Alright, so our answer to this one, 926. And does that make sense to you if we estimate? If we estimate the 698, that would be 700. And if we estimate the 228, that would be about 200. Okay, so our answer does make sense. We can see that 700 and 200 is roughly 900, and our answer fits. Alright, it's always good to check your work, and estimating is a great way to do that. Let's use some, how about if we switch colors here? Let me try some blue. Alright, let's try another of these. Alright, so let's choose one here. We'll go with this one, looks good. Alright, so our next problem is $497, and that's plus $166. So 7 plus 6. Alright, that's 13. And we carry the 1. 9 plus 6 is 15. Plus 1 is 16. We write the 6 and carry the 1. 4, 5, 6. Alright, so our answer is 663. And tell me if it makes sense when we use estimation to check our problem. That would be about 500 and 166. That would be about 200. Okay, so our answer should be close to 700. And it is. Alright, great. Okay. That's great. Alright, let's see what we have next. Regrouping with subtraction. Alright, we do need to practice this. Alright, this one's a little more complicated. Alright, so everyone seems to have a little trouble with this at one point or another. So let's start with just a 2-digit example. We'll start here. 34 minus 15. Okay. So now we could easily figure this out in our heads, right? It's a small number, the numbers are close together, but we need to try and remember how to do these operations for when we have more complicated questions. So we start with the ones column here, and we can see that we have a 4 minus a 5, which we can't write a negative number down here in our answer. So we need to borrow 10 from the tens column. And in the tens column, we have a 3, which represents 30. So if we borrow 10, the 3 becomes a 2, which represents 20. Okay? Now we're going to give that 10 to the ones column, and the 14 will become, the 4 will become a 14. And now we can easily subtract 5 from 14, which is 9. Good. And now we simply subtract the tens. 2 minus 1 is 19. There we go. So our answer to 34 minus 15 is 19. Does that make sense to you? Alright, let's try another. Alright, should we try a 3-digit number this time? Alright, so how about this one right here? We'll do 817, and that will be minus 396. Okay, so let's see what happens here. So if we subtract the 7 minus the 6, that we can do, and that's a 1, right? Now we have the 1 minus the 9, and we need to borrow from the hundreds column so that we are able to do this calculation here. So we need to borrow from the 800, right? And that's going to make the 8 become a 7. And we're giving to the tens column, so we're just going to make the 1 become an 11. 11 minus 9 is 2. And now we subtract the hundreds, and that is 7 minus 3 is 4. 4. And this makes sense as well, right? 800, if we estimate that, would be about an 800 minus, what would we estimate 396 to? 400. So 800 minus 400 is roughly 400. So our answer makes sense. Okay? All right. So how are you feeling about the subtraction with the regrouping? All right. All right. Just a few more problems left. Now for this example, we are going to have to work with subtraction using double zeros. Okay, now this one is a little complicated. Alright, but it's the same method every time. So let's start with this one here. We have 900 minus 87. Alright, so first thing that we see is we have a 0 minus a 7. Right? So we can't do that. And what we normally would do is borrow from the tens column. But we also can't do that because there's a 0 in the tens column. So we need to come all the way over and borrow from the hundreds. So the 9 is going to become an 8. Okay? Now we're going to give to the tens. Alright, and the tens column now becomes a 10. And now we can finally borrow from the tens to give to the ones. So we're going to borrow from the 10, make that a 9, and we'll make the 0 a 10. Does that make sense to you? Alright, so let's do the calculation now. We have 10 minus 7 is 3, and 9 minus 8 is 1. Finally, we're left with an 8. It's an implied 0 here, so 8 minus 0 is 8. Very good. Let's do another one of these because I know it's just one of those things that has to stick in our memory. Alright, we have a 900, again we have double zeros, minus 132. So you tell me what to do first. That's right. From here we need to borrow, and we can't borrow from there, so that's right. And the 0 here becomes a good 10, and we borrow from the 10, becomes a 9, and that becomes a 10. So 10 minus 2 is 8, 9, right here, minus 3, 6. Alright, and finally 8 minus 1, 7. Very good. 900 minus 132, 768. That's right, and that makes sense because it's somewhere between 7 and 800. Okay. Let's try another color here. Let's see. Alright, that will work. So we are working on the double zeros. So we're going to try another one here. Let's try this one. $200 minus 36. Alright, so we see we have a 0 minus a 6, and we can't do that. So we try to borrow from the tens, which we also can't do because there is a 0 in the tens place. So we're going to have to borrow from the hundreds. So the 2 becomes a 1, okay? And then we can give to the tens. And from the tens column, we will borrow. And the 0 becomes a 10. Okay? Alright, so now we can do the subtraction. We have 10 minus 6 is 4. Alright, so let me move this out of the way. And we have 9 minus 3, and that is 6. 1 minus a 0 is 1. Alright, so I think you feel comfortable with this now. Okay. Just more practice with estimating. Alright, we only have 3 more types of problems. We're moving on to some multiplication. So these are simple multiplication problems. Our first one here is, let's see, 48 times 8. Okay. So we start by multiplying the ones, and we have an 8 times an 8. And what is the answer to that? 64. So we place the 4 and we carry the 6 over to the tens column. Now we multiply the tens by the 1, so we have 4 times 8, and that is, that's why it's good to do flashcards or just these types of simple arithmetic problems always bring us back to the basics. Alright, so let's do this one first. Okay, let's see here. Let's do alright, we're going to do a multiplication problem. Let's use the blue. Alright, so we have, let's try this one here. Let's do this one. 82 times 7. Okay. So we start with 2 times 7 is 14. So we write the 4 and we bring the 1 up above the 8. Now we multiply. 7 times 8 is 56 plus 1 is, good, 57. So our answer is 574. Okay. Yep, that's good with just having to memorize your multiplication facts. Now these are our problems involving decimals, and we are going to be subtracting. So it's good we just practiced with our basic subtraction. Now we just have to add in the fact that some of these numbers have decimals. Now these first ones are pretty straightforward. I'll show you what I mean. Let me make that a little more obvious. 7.77, and we're going to subtract from that 2.83. So we have the same number of digits. There are 3 digits in both of these numbers. So they line right up. The most important thing is that we always need to make sure the decimals are lined up in the same position. So it's 2.83. And now we can do our simple subtraction. We have a 7 minus a 3, and that is 4. Good. Now we have a little problem again. We have a 7 minus an 8, and we can't subtract 8 from 7, so we borrow from the hundreds. The 7 becomes a 6. And this 7 becomes a 17. So now we can subtract 8 from 17, and that is sorry about that, 9, and 6 minus 2 is 4. Good. And our decimal comes straight down and it remains in the same position. So our answer is 4.94. Okay, that makes sense. If we estimate the 7.77, we would round that up to about an 8, right? And if we estimate the 2.83, that would be about a 3. So 8 minus 3 is 5. And our answer is 4.94. Very close, so I think we are on the right track. All right. This one, we're going to do one more here. And I just want to practice it's this one here, the decimals. Okay. Okay, this one right here. 8 0.17 minus 'okay, and there's a decimal there. Alright, so we do 7 minus 4 is 3, and 1 minus 0. Good. Okay. Now I like to bring the decimal straight down. Okay. 8 minus 3, 5. Very good. Now let me just put another one over here to this side. Let's see, let's say I have 4.28, and the number that I want to add is 3.4. Do I place that here? 3.4? No, that's right, I keep the place values lined up. We can even add a 0 just for clarity. Now we can add 8 plus 0 is good. 2 plus 4 is 6. We bring the decimal right down in its place, and we have 4 plus 3 is good. Now that makes sense, right? We have about 4 and about 3 is about 7. Okay, very good. we're going to do one last problem on the board here. And then we're going to have a look in our book for the upcoming assignments. Okay. So we're going to get into one problem involving fractions. So let me give you this example here. It is a word problem, and our problem says there are 15 different desserts on the menu. 1/3 of them are cakes. How many of the desserts are cakes? Okay. So this is how we can figure this one out. Alright, so we have 15 cakes all together, right? And we have 1/3 of them. I'm sorry, we have 15 desserts. Sorry about that. And 1/3 are cakes. Okay. So they want us to figure out how many of the desserts are cakes. So I like to write these as a arithmetic sentence. So we know that 1/3 of, and when we say of, that usually means multiplication. 1/3 of 15 equals, that's our unknown, is the x. That's what we're trying to solve. So now we have a fraction over here and a whole number right here. But we are simply multiplying, and we know that every whole number is basically over 1. Itself over 1. And if you remember, when we multiply fractions, all we need to do is multiply the numerators by each other, and then we place that over the denominators multiplied by each other. Okay, so 1 times 15 is, good, and 3 times 1 is 3. Now I just need to do our calculation. And this is an easy one. We know that 15 divided by 3 is 5. Alright, so we always have to remember to write our unit as well. So what is our unit? We have 5 cakes. Very good. So that makes sense. If 1/3 of our whole, which is 15, we basically divide the whole amount by the amount that it is divided up into, which is 3. So 15 divided by 3 is 5. Okay? Alright, very good. Alright, so I think that our brains are getting a little overworked. So we'll take a quick break and then we'll move into the book for our upcoming units. And we'll just get a quick introduction to that so you won't be having such a hard time when it comes up in class, okay? Alright, just want to quickly go over your upcoming work that you will be learning. Okay, so we don't need to master it at this point, but we'll just get a little familiar with it. You already are pretty familiar with it, but we'll just work on a few of the problems, alright? So this is also upcoming, your graphing using the slope and y-intercept, but we're not going to work on that today. Alright, going to do just a few of these algebra problems. Okay, so let's get this notebook out. Okay. Let's work right here. Alright, so our first problem that we're going to do, let's do the odds. The first problem is 5x minus 24 equals 101. Okay. Alright, so do you have an idea of what we do first? Alright, so just remember what we are trying to do is find out what does the x equal, right? Because it stands for a certain number. And in this problem right here, it's saying 5 of x. We have 5 of x. And remember, when we say of, that means multiplication. So 5 times some number minus 24 equals 101. So what we have to do is figure out how to get our sentence to say x equals something. Okay, so we're going to try to move everything else besides the x over to this side. So right here we see we have a minus 24. So all we need to do is add 24 to both sides of the equation to keep it the equivalent value on each side. So when we do that, that comes down here, and what's left, if we have negative 24 plus 24, that cancels out the 24, and all we're left with is 5x equals 101 plus 24 is 125. So now we're left with 5 times x equals 125. And then it becomes pretty much just a basic division problem. So if we want to find out what x is, we need to divide away the 5. So we're going to divide away 5, and remember we have to do the same operation to both sides of the equation. So we're going to divide 5 from this side too. So 5 times x divided by 5 cancels out the 5. or it actually equals 1. And we don't need to write the 1, we just have 1x, which is basically just x. So we're left with x. Now we just have to do the calculation, 125 divided by 5. And we can do that in our heads, or if you need to do a long division problem, or you can use your calculator. So that is 25, right? Okay, so x equals 25, and that's your answer. All right, and you can always check it by plugging the value that we found for x back into this original problem. It's always good to check your work. Okay, it's easy to make mistakes in math. So if we check it here, it would say 5 times 25, and that's one number, so we put it in parentheses, minus 24. Does that equal 101? It should. If it doesn't, then we've done something wrong. So 5 times 25 is 125 minus 24. Now does that equal 101? It does. So there we go. We got the right solution. X equals 25. Alright, so how do you feel about this problem? Let's try one more. Alright, let's go with number 3 here. And I'll just put this for reference. We are working on page 89. If you need to come back and reference these problems. So question number 3 says 12 plus 8w equals 76. Okay, so we know it's 12 plus 8 times some number equals 76. It's very similar to this problem, except we're doing addition. Okay, so the first thing we do is, we're going to subtract 12 from both sides. And we're left with 8w equals, and what's 76 minus 12? Okay, 64. Okay, one last step. We divide away the 8 on both sides. That cancels out. We're left with w equals 64 divided by 8. That's right. So w equals 8. There we go. That's our solution. And you see it always does come down to basic arithmetic. So it's very important to do your facts and try and always remember your multiplication facts. Okay? Alright, so I think that is enough for today. Okay? Did very good. Do you feel a little bit more confident with your math class now? Alright. Well, that is good. Of course, I'm always here. Alright, in case you have any questions. Okay. And so I recommend pretty soon it will seem easy to you, okay? Alright, good job. I'll see you next time.